thank you. Actually, this is a great group. Does anyone mind if I take a picture of this big group? Because I'm just really, I'm impressed, not only for our partnership here with the Budapest Chamber of Commerce and Industry, this is the second time I've spoken at the Budapest Chamber of Commerce and Industry, but also with our partners, the American Hungarian Chamber of Commerce, which I think is just the trifecta of us working together to promote bilateral trade and investment. I think it's really wonderful. So Mr. Naj and Martin, of course, thanks for being great partners, and thanks for everyone for coming today. So my name is Neil Pickett. I'm the Senior Commercial Officer at the U.S. Embassy. As I said, this is my second time I'm speaking here at the Budapest Chamber. I've only been in country for 4 months, so that shows the interest that the Budapest Chamber has and what interest we have with the Budapest Chamber. But today I'd like to talk about the 2003 Select USA Investment Summit and the process of investing in the United States from the federal government point of view. So let me see if I can get this thing to work, and it did. So what is our mission? Our mission is to promote business investment in the United States, and we do that in a variety of ways. I'm not going to read the slides for you, but I would encourage everyone either in this room or online to reach out and ask us for a copy of the slide deck. And the reason for that is because in this slide deck are a lot of links to resources, and they're resources that you can take with you and look at them anytime you wish. And so please do reach out to us. So our mission is to promote business investment in the United States. We work on an interagency basis to provide counseling to companies. We provide in-depth market analysis. The most important thing that we do is we're geographically neutral in the fact that we want to welcome you to the United States, but we want to welcome you to the United States as a successful business, not as just someone. We're not looking to get people just to come to the United States for your investment. We want you to be successful. And the way that we do that is we provide data that's going to help support your business, data that's going to take that emotional aspect away from your decision-making process and put it into real actionable terms. We offer ombudsman assistance. So if you're, I like to use examples. So if you're a food processing company or a medical supply company and you need assistance in navigating the Food and Drug Administration requirements, or if you need help navigating FDA or the healthcare requirements, we don't do that in our office, but we can connect you with the right offices that do in the federal government, and that just saves you a lot of time. Time is money, and we just want to try to save that for you. So this presentation is broken down into 5 basic questions, and I will say that in doing this this kind of outreach, I've heard the 5 questions often, and everyone asks them a little bit differently, but these are the basic questions. So what are the incentives and programs for foreign investors? Well, I'm going to tell you, people aren't ready just to give you money because you want to invest in the country. And so I'll detail these. So the federal programs are actually pretty light. They're programs for focusing on agricultural business development, aerospace programs, energy programs, chemical programs, and travel programs. If you have interest in any of those, there's going to be some federal assistance for you, depending on the size of the company and what your real focus is. Other ways the federal government can support investors is through the EB-5 visa for immigrant programs. So if you invest in enough money in the United States and you're looking at moving there, this is one of the incentives. Business tax credits are another incentive, and renewable energy investment tax credits. These are all incentives for you. And as I mentioned earlier, all of these, let's see. all of these links take you directly to the information you need for these different incentive programs. So that's why I don't want to read the whole slide process for you, but that's why this is necessary. Now, the states, and we're happy to have 3 different state representatives here in our speaker panels with us. The states offer more incentive programs than the federal government. Their incentive programs are more tax-focused, land-focused, and grant-focused. So if you go to this link here, selectusa.stateincentives.org, you can click on any of the states that's shown on this slide, and it'll tell you all of the incentives, or most of the incentives that are listed specifically for that state. State economic development agencies are broken into 3 distinct regions. The state itself, so there's 50 states in the United States. They're also broken regionally. So we have the, I'll say, just for geographic neutral focus here, we've got the Greater Midwest Partnership. So the Midwest of the United States, let me just go back to the map, is kind of in this area here. It's really not in the West. It's not in the middle of the West. It's about 1/3 from the right. But because that's where a bulk of the population is, that's where it is. So, sorry, I like to tell jokes, so if I make you laugh, thanks very much. So the Midwest isn't in the Midwest, but that's where the Midwest Partnership is based. And so they focus on regional development programs. So you may see some activity for the state of Illinois, the state of Indiana, and the state of Michigan, all in the state of Wisconsin, all working together in one focus. Could be automotive industry. That's a very big area of that country, of the country there. But we also work beyond that. So we look at individual cities or local economic development agencies. Again, we're talking about the Midwest, and just for simplicity, I'm going to pick World Business Chicago. So World Business Chicago is the City of Chicago specific economic development agency focused on attracting investors to Chicago. Not to the area around Chicago, because that would be either the regional the Economic Development Agency or the state of Illinois Economic Development Agency, which the state of Illinois is where Chicago is. So you have different levels of economic development agencies that offer support. And I'll give you a hint, and I apologize to my colleagues that have come in from out of town here talking about their own specific states, and we have some great ones, but you as the investor, don't tell them, but you as the investor can negotiate with them on the incentives that you're picking. You can pit them together, pit them against each other, and use that as a negotiating tactic. Don't tell my colleagues. Where should I invest? This is actually the most important question, and this is where we want to take the emotional aspect out of it. Okay, well, I tell you, if I was going to invest in the United States, well, and I have because I have a house there, I would want to go by the beach because I love the beach. I love the warm weather. It's fantastic. But is it good for business? Unless you're selling surfboards or boats, maybe it's not the best for your business. So let's take that emotional aspect out of it, and we'll figure out where you can invest. So if you're choosing the right state, again, here's just an example: textile manufacturing, anything to do with towels, shirts, making sweaters, pants, socks, whatever have you. If you use these links here, going to clustermapping.us and type in the type of product or service that you're offering, you can see these highlighted areas show you exactly where the hot spots are. That's where the main concentration of the companies that are making textiles and textile products, or even textile suppliers, are in these areas. And so it's likely going to be an area that your business is likely to succeed. So we can do that by either region or by market cluster. Again, reach out for the slide deck because these links are yours. And when you click on that link, it'll take you to that page exactly as it looks there. Okay, here's another one. Where are your consumers? We'd love you to come to the US, but if you don't know where your market is, if you don't know who your buying public is, then that's going to be a challenge because you need to be able to sell the products that you're trying to market in the US. The US has a great opportunity for all companies because it has the largest consumer base per capita in the world. If you can make it in the United States, I mean, you really are poised to make some good money. But if you want to find out where your customers are, go to zoomprospector.com and you'll learn where your customer base is. And you can do that by, again, market cluster. Not that I chose this, but that's the Midwest right there. And so you can actually see that by searching on, and I don't even remember what keyword I picked out here, that's where the market clusters are. You can see that there's some of the market that kind of drops off here. But that's the big cluster. So if you're focusing on the product that's on this search, what is it? Well, I can't read it from here. Maybe I need better eyes. So anyways, if you do a little research, it'll help you focus your energy. And Stats America, this is another great program. This is again, helping you identify where your products are going to be best received. So this particular map here is the innovation index. And so what is the innovation index? Everyone has creative things. Is there anyone in this audience that's a IT or cyber company? 1, 2, 56 people in this audience. That's pretty amazing. And I didn't count that fast. But if you're looking at this specific map, you can see there's San Francisco, there's Utah, there's Colorado, there's Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston over here, New York, Miami. Well, these are where there's all the tech hubs are. And that's not the only tech hubs, but that's where there's a lot of innovation being done and being formed. So for the IT and cyber companies that are out there, and I saw a lot of hands, this would be a great map to dive into and see where your markets are. Everyone wants to go to Silicon Valley. Anyone who's a computer does the computer companies or the IT companies that are here, does anyone want to go to Silicon Valley? Can you raise your hands? No, because it's too expensive. It's actually really expensive. It's one of the most expensive places in the world. So it's a great place to go and have meetings. But as a startup company in the United States, maybe go to something a little bit more conducive to your market focus. Maybe go to an area of the country that's a little more conducive to your product. Because I tell you, if you're looking at health IT, then maybe, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Has anyone heard of that? Maybe that's better. Or Boston, Massachusetts. There's a lot of health IT companies there. And not only are there health IT companies, but there's a lot of companies or a lot of talent to be able to hire to help your company succeed. So these are some things to think about. How much will it cost to open a business in the United States? Well, I'll say have a pocket full of money because the U.S. is an expensive market. It is more expensive than Hungary. If you're going to go to the United States, please don't go with just 10,000 forints in your pocket. You would last maybe a day. You'd have a nice dinner out and then you'd have to come home. Plan your time. If you're going to open a business in the United States, you're going to want to have enough money to rent an apartment for a year. You're going to want enough money to rent a small office, maybe in a shared environment for a year. All of these things. But you know what? There's a lot more details to it than just an apartment and office space. You have to think about labor costs. You have to think about travel. I mean, if you want to come back and forth to Budapest, I mean, there's expense there. Shipping your products, if you're going to open an office there and ship your products in to sell them in the US, how much is that going to cost? Quality control, trade financing, inventory, intellectual property. Well, the one thing about intellectual property is the U.S. has very good and very strong intellectual property laws. We just ask you to register your products, register through the U.S. Patent and Trade Office. I mean, that's a great tool. That's another government tool. And by the way, we can introduce you because we are ombudsman in that circumstance. So this is the ACE tool. This is by Department of Commerce, and this is Assess Costs Everywhere tool. It'll tell you all of the different costs that you're going to incur. Another one is the total cost of ownership estimator. This helps you identify all of the different costs that you're going to use in the United States and compare them to other countries. So if you're looking at the US market and you want to know, hey, what is it going to cost me to go to the US versus what am I already doing here in Hungary? You already know your costs here in Hungary. This is a good way to compare those costs. Minimum wage laws. Well, each state in the United States has its own different wage and cost of living and so forth. There's 50 different states in the US, 50 different minimum wages. Now, there may actually there's a national minimum wage, but each state may have its own minimum wage, which will tell you what it's going to cost in that state. This is the Department of Labor. It'll also help you navigate the taxes, employment taxes in those states as well. So this is a government, U.S. government website, so please familiarize yourself with that. Then you have to think, what's this other question? What else should I be concerned with? I'm glad you asked. And we have an expert here who can kind of talk about this stuff. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a lawyer. If I was a lawyer, I probably would still be sitting down waiting for my turn. But choosing a business structure is really important, because it has tax advantages, it has advantages for ownership protection against lawsuits and so forth. So choosing a business structure is one of those things that you really should contact a lawyer before you get in trouble. So there's two ways to look at lawyers and accountants. A lawyer will get you out of trouble. An accountant will keep you out of trouble. So choose a good lawyer and a good accountant before you go into your U.S. investment. Registering a new business. Now, this is actually more for companies that are established there. You have to be a legal resident in order to use this service. So if you hire a U.S. company or a U.S. employee, they can go down to the Small Business Administration or the SBA and learn how to register your business. Registration of a business is important. Not every business needs to be registered, but there are certain things that you should be concerned with, like licenses and permits. For instance, if you are a hair cutter, do you know that you need a license to cut hair in the United States? You don't need a license to do a lot of stuff, but you need a license to cut hair. You need a license for certain beauty products and that. And there's certain permits that you need in order to move ahead with your business. So these are some things to think about. Again, I see a lot of people taking pictures of the slides, and you're welcome to do it. But we will share these with you absolutely free, because we want you to have the information. We don't want you to go through and wonder about these great topics. Then, here's the last question. Where can I go for more information? Again, I'm so glad you asked for this, because this is actually probably the most important question you could ask all day. Well, number one, you've probably heard, this is the Select USA program. Select USA is the all of US government approach to helping foreign companies navigate the investment process. Of course, it's housed in the Department of Commerce. I work with the Department of Commerce, so I'm very proud of that. But we work with our State Department people, because you know what? State Department people are the ones who issue your visas or your ESTA. So, you know, they're important to this process. Department of Labor, you know, they have all of the data on minimum wage and tax laws and so forth. Oh, taxes, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. This is all of government. So Select USA is a great resource for you. So I would be remiss if I didn't provide a little pitch to companies that are interested in furthering their investment knowledge beyond this seminar to consider coming to the Select USA Investment Summit. It's held basically every year for the last, well, since 2013. And this year it'll be May 1st through 4th. I apologize that it's on a holiday here in Hungary, you know, May 1st, and also actually all over most of Europe. Trust me, we didn't have any input on that, but if we did, it would have been held the next week. But it's May 1st through 4th in Washington, D.C. The slide says National Harbor, but it's really Washington, D.C. area. It's a kind of a more of a regional area. SelectUSA.gov is the website for that. We would welcome anyone to peruse that website and to learn more about the summit. Additionally, we have flyers outside, and I'm happy to give one to anyone who wants one. I would say really, so I got put up here because I have the funny voice in the room. My colleague Eva is really the brains behind this entire program. Eva, can you raise your hand or stand up? So this is Eva. Eva is absolutely a rock star and has every bit of information about the Select USA Summit. She's happy to register you or to help you register. There is a cost. I mean, you have to pay to go, but it's an incredible opportunity to get the best information about investing in the United States that you'll have anywhere. This is not a simple summit. It's typically opened by the President of the United States or the Vice President of the United States. We have the Department of Commerce Secretary that speaks, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Energy, the Secretary of Labor. It's all of the highest level government officials in the U.S. government that come to support this, as well as C-level or CEO level U.S. companies that come in and talk about doing business in the United States. What else is there at Select USA? Oh, there's just something called Select Tech. And Select Tech, oh, I happen to have another flyer for Select Tech. We have these on the front table as well. Select Tech is for all of those tech companies. I remember I saw about 20 hands. I did lie, it wasn't 56, it was 20 in the audience. For all of those tech companies that are less than 10 years old, have less than $10 million, what is that? That's 440 million forints. There's a huge range that we select into Select Tech, and there's a pitching session. So the Select Tech pitching session allows companies to compete against other tech companies from around the world in the following categories: clean tech, fintech, med tech, miscellaneous tech, and software and ITC or ICT products. So these companies that vie for this challenge win guidance from senior U.S. companies to help them navigate the U.S. market. It's a wonderful process. If you're welcomed into this program, you have to apply to be a part of this program. But if you're welcomed into this program, you get a discounted rate to go to Select USA. You get to meet with other companies. You get to pitch your product or service to angel investors. Where else can you have that kind of exposure right there, you know, in a competitive environment? And with that, I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming to our program today. It's really incredible. If you are interested, we also have these books, Visit the USA, because you know what? you shouldn't just entertain the thought of going to a country because it's a great place to do business. You also want to have some fun there. So take a look at the different type of tourism opportunities in this book here come up. We have two different versions. They're similar. It's just 1 year they're just different productions. So please come up and take one. And I look forward to engaging any one of you after the program. I also do invite you to spend some time in the networking area. We have several U.S. states that are coming to talk about specifically their states, their incentives. We have an attorney, we have an accounting firm, we have a bank who's going to talk about how to open a bank account in the United States. I mean, this is a mini conference that's designed to stimulate some of your thought process. It's not designed to teach you everything you need to know, but we will help you along the way afterwards, and this gives you just enough base knowledge. So thank you so much for coming, and let's see, who is next? Do you want me to just go ahead and introduce them? Okay, so the next person is Alina from Citibank, and Alina is going to tell us how to open a bank account in the United States, a really important step. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Alina Hofner. I'm a Treasury and Trade Solutions Head within Citi Hungary, and I'm covering also the payments and receivables for the Central Europe. I'm with Citi for 15 years, majority of the time spent in Romania, and just moved here in Budapest last summer. So I would say that all of us live in a very complex world. Companies like you burn global, or you are just looking how to go global, how to go to US. So if you're looking around us, all the governments are looking how to forge this dynamic, and also the economies, the governments are looking on the digital agenda, and the company and the consumers, when thinking about the financial services, they are thinking how to embed it smoothly in their digital experience. But I would say that just to come back to our theme for today is that you are thinking of going to US, which might be easy if you are just considering that it's the biggest global economy, has more than 23 trillion USD dollars in GDP, has more than 330 million population, which is a global market, open market, and has very stable democracy, very easy, I would say predictable legal legislation, but also can be difficult. You heard before that you need to have a permit, you need to worry about the costs, and also you need to have a good accountant, good lawyer. So I would say that take all the information from today, just think about a good accountant, good lawyer, and then just worry about the costs. So your company just decided to go to US. There will be like your US Treasury Department will just think of, there are some challenges around it. First, it's about how you are going to establish the operating a company that will have operational activities. So you'll need to think how to finance it, how to open an injunction account, how to think about the funding limits. So there are a lot of considerants that your Treasury Department will just look into it. Then it's about opening an account with the bank. So there are a lot of information that will be required, where you'll find all the documentations, and also the know your customers requirements, which might be quite extensive. And also information in regards to local signers, a lot of information that eventually are important when going to a new market. So, okay, so the way that us at Citi are looking at this, we just think that the onboarding and the entire know your customer process, it's a dynamic one. This requires eventually the active participation from both the Citi, from the bank, but also from you, from the customers. We just put together a lot of documents that eventually would be required for you when going to US and you need to open an account. First will be the client documents. will be a lot of documents that are required, the constitutive documents, the way how to authority documents, how to authorize and identify the persons that are going to be authorized to sign on your accounts. So you need a lot of information. Also, there will be these identification documents for your signers, which might be very specific to the local market. Maybe you'll hear it also later today. Can be proof of business address, proof of the address of the signer, a photo ID, which usually is the passport. So a lot of information required just from your client perspective. And then the tax form that maybe you'll hear later today about what are these the W8 and W9, which you might also need to talk to a tax advisor to understand which one is applicable for your company. I would say the additional know your customer documents, these are very important. Nowadays, you see more and more sophisticated financial crime. So this is why it's important for a bank to have all the information from know your customer from KYC perspective. And this includes the ownership, the beneficial owner, and very specific to US is this FinCEN form, which eventually can be downloaded from a website, but this will help with identification and verification of the ultimate beneficial owner. So all this controlling person IDs, this will be part of the QIC when talking to a bank. So before opening the bank, you need to go through the client documentation and the QIC documentation and requirements. And after everything is vetted, then you can go further to open the account with the bank. And then from city perspective, will be like account agreements, which are usually our general terms and conditions, the master account service terms, confidentiality data privacy conditions, local conditions, which are just putting together all the general conditions with working with city, signature card, account opening form. All this will be just part of the last process, last step before opening an account with the bank. I think it will be important to choose the right bank that will have the right expertise and will help you guide you through the entire process, just that everything becomes as a smooth and a seamless process, irrespective of all this avalanche of documents that might be that you are required. But eventually, a good by having the right partner, I think it's manageable. So the way that we are working with Citi, usually we are starting the relationship where the customer headquarters is. In this case, this is about Hungary. So depending on a discussion with our coverage partners, we can see if we can serve you as a company, and then you are going to be allocated a new unique a sole contact person, which is the parent account manager. This will help you, guide you, and through the process, first of having the account open in Hungary, but then will help you further how to go to US, how to open the account with us, how to bank with us in US. And this is when you are going to have a subsidiary account manager that is going to be assigned with you in the US. Of course, if you are interested in other markets, you can have a regional account manager in Asia, for example. So everything goes depending on your needs and where your company, how global your company also wants to be. So just a few facts about the city. We are present in US since 1812, so it's more than 210 years since Citi entered the US market as Citibank of New York. This is how it was initially called. We have more than 210-year experience there. We are providing our network to more than 95 countries. We have a global presence and eventually are serving 90%, almost 90% of the Fortune Global 500 companies. So very wide presence on the ground experience. And what we can say that eventually through our network, every day it flows around 4 trillion USD payments, and just as processed daily in North America is around $1.9 trillion. So we are quite active in the US. There is a headquarters in New York, but also across the United States there are other branches. And just before closing, so Citi, when working with Citi, we are just offering the full-fledged solutions. We have 5 interconnected core business. This is markets, banking, which can be commercial banking, corporate banking, services, which eventually is the treasury and trade solutions, which I'm working with. In US specifically, it's the private banking and the global wealth management. But using the treasury and trade solutions, eventually it comes exactly on offering you how to manage your cash management flows, your daily flows, and how to manage your business. Because the solutions that we are offering eventually can come and respond to your needs. We are offering the digital solutions. We have our proprietary direct channel that helps you have the access from all your companies, and also by having the interconnection with the City Connect, can be very easily to be interconnected with your ERP and together with City. We are offering our payments capabilities can go in 95 markets, more than 140 currencies across the globe. So we can just have access to the ACH clearing, to the domestic cross-border wires, check payments, real-time payments, and you can manage better on your cash flow because everything can go smoothly through our network. Also, the receivables collections will help you just how to think of how to increase your revenue line, because usually by using our products, it's very easy to just focus on the revenue line and make all the savings on the operational costs, manual workarounds. And we are offering the proprietary cards, which also will give you all the benefits around 100 markets, trade, which will look at your working capital, your trade financing needs, guarantee needs, and liquidity management to help you how to optimize eventually your liquidity, how to bring more efficiency, and how to, and also the FX, which will allow you to do the payments in what I said, in more than 140 currencies. So I think the key is, when going to US, just think of how you can better manage your account there and pick the right partners. And I think it's going to be a very easy and smooth process. Thank you. And if you have any questions, we are going to be just to be outside after the event. Thank you.
Go step to step, and after the banking, the next question is the tax, which is also very important in the US. Please, Mr. Attila Kövesdi, take's yours.
So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I'm the accountant, although I'm a lawyer, so I'm not sure which is the right one. I have 15 minutes to cover tax and accounting aspects of investing in the US. I will try and keep it quite brief and high level. Just a very brief introduction. I'm a partner here in Hungary with Deloitte. I mostly do tax. I spent a year and a half in the US working there, so I have a very, very basic understanding of US tax concepts. And one thing I know about US tax is that you really, you think when you start to understand it and you think you understand it, then you really know you don't understand it, because it's so deep, it's so complex. So there's no way we can cover it here, but I will do my best to give you some highlights. And the way I would like to structure this is, I think there's if you have a Hungarian investor going into the US, there's always sort of two aspects, sort of the US inbound aspects, so the US considerations you have to look at, and sort of the Hungarian outbound aspects, so the Hungarian tax and legal considerations. So this is the way I would like to structure it. And I will start with the US ones. And I had some preliminary questions, and I think there's quite a difficult topic, or a hot topic, which is the US-Hungary tax treaty. So I will cover that and try and give you some information on how we see that. So US inbound tax and legal considerations. It's quite a busy slide. A lot of stuff in here. As Neil said, you'll have access to these slides. But just a couple of highlights. Like it was mentioned in the presentation, the US has federal system, and there's states, and there's things below the states, and also the tax system somewhat follows that. So there is a federal income tax rate, which is 21% in the US at the moment. There is also additional state or local taxes. These vary state by state. So I guess, I would assume one consideration where you set up in which state is, what the corporate tax rate there is, beside the incentives and sort of all the other taxes. The state income tax rates vary between 1% and 12%, so you have to add that to the federal income tax rate. And beside that, there are also withholding taxes, and by withholding taxes we mean taxes that are due on payments that you make from the U.S. to Hungary, and I will cover that in a little more detail because that's where the treaty comes in. There's also a bunch of other things here on the slide. I think most of those are applicable to large companies with certain high income thresholds. So if it's relevant to you, great. But I guess it's probably not relevant to most of us here. In terms of accounting, the US has its own set of accounting rules. So it's not Hungarian GAAP. It's US GAAP. And for those companies that follow the fiscal year as the calendar year, the income tax returns are due by April 15. So that was sort of very high level sort of tax. One thing I think you should also consider, and it was touched on very briefly, is the type of entity that you will use to set up in the US. And here there is a big difference between the Hungarian accounting and tax system and the US tax system, and you will see this a lot. So let me just spend a minute or two on it. Is that the US has a concept of flow-through entities, which means that for tax purposes, those entities are not treated as taxpayers. We don't have that concept in Hungarian tax. So all the entities that we know in Hungary, the KFTs, the BTs, the ZRTs, every entity is a taxable entity in itself. The US has this concept of flow-through entities, which means that the entity itself is not taxed on its income. It's the owners of the entity or the shareholders of that entity that are taxed. So it's flow-through entities. And without getting into details, you can also make certain elections under US tax law to treat certain entities as flow-throughs. Other entities might not be treated and have sort of a default treatment. So what type of entity you're going to use when you invest into the US, and how that entity is going to be taxed is something to think through. Now, there's also a concept of branch offices. A branch office is not a separate legal entity, so you can also do business through a branch of a Hungarian company. The main difference is that if you have an entity that is, properly constituted legal entity with its sort of own legal personality, a branch office would be sort of an organizational unit of the Hungarian company in the US. Tax-wise, it's pretty similar to an entity. There's also sort of other considerations that might come into play whether you use an entity or a branch office. In terms of financing, obviously, as Neil said, you need a lot of money if you're going to invest into the US. He said 10,000 forints enough for a dinner. I don't think so. So that may be a McDonald's dinner. But anyway, so you'll have to finance the entity. You can do that either with cash, with equity, or you can do it with debt. The debt can obviously come from, Hungary, so it can be like an intercompany debt, or you can finance it locally through maybe Citibank in the US. And then there are a bunch of rules in the US on how much debt a company can absorb, especially if it's intercompany debt, and there's limitations on the interest deductions available. So those are the things you also have to consider. So that was sort of very, very high level. So in summary, US inbound, consider federal income tax, consider state income taxes, consider the type of entity that you're going to use, the legal form, how that will be treated for US tax purposes, how you're going to finance that entity, debt or equity, intercompany or local, and also potentially, branch structure. So look at it, from a Hungarian point of view. If you're going into the US from Hungary, so just establishing a US branch or a US entity, doesn't in itself have any material Hungarian tax consequences. So just because you set up a branch in the US or you set up a company in the US, doesn't lead to taxation. What does lead to taxation, obviously, if that entity or branch has income, or if that income is repatriated. And let me cover briefly here the tax treaty, because I did mention withholding taxes. So there was a very, very old treaty between the US and Hungary from 1970 something. I think it was one of the oldest tax treaties we had. The US terminated that tax treaty. For practical purposes, the effective date of that termination is going to be January 1, 2024. So during this year, you will still have benefits of that tax treaty. There is a new treaty between the US and Hungary that was signed back in 2010. That treaty has not yet been ratified by Congress. So, I think eventually we will have a tax treaty between the US and Hungary, but there's, basically two ways as we see it to go about that. Either that 2010 treaty is ratified by Congress, which we're told would be tricky because it might need to renegotiate it because of, various changes in US domestic law since then, or a new treaty will have, or a completely new tax treaty will have to be renegotiated. So I think the current position is that, for 2023, we're okay. But absent anything happening from January 1, 2024, there will be no effective tax treaty in place between the two countries. And the most tricky part of that is that in absence of a treaty, there will be US withholding tax on payments coming out from the US to Hungary. So if you have a business there and you're repatriating either dividends or interest or have some sort of payments, depending on the type of payment, the US does have a withholding tax under its domestic law, which could be reduced by the treaty, but in absence of a treaty, you will have to pay the domestic rate. Now, the good news is that you can credit that US tax against your Hungarian tax on that income with certain limitations, because the withholding tax, and this is, particular form of tax, and it's quite common in international tax. It's a withholding tax because it's the US company that has to deduct that tax from the payment it's making to Hungary, but it's actually the tax obligation of the Hungarian company. So payable to the US Treasury, withheld by the US payer, and therefore for Hungarian tax purposes, it's creditable against the tax that you have to pay on that income in Hungary. The tax calculation is quite tricky. Certain types of income is exempt in Hungary. So if you have dividends coming out from the US back to Hungary, again, subject to a couple of rules, that income is exempt. So for instance, if you have exempt income, which is not taxable in Hungary, obviously there's no Hungarian tax against which the withholding tax could be credited. So then it's an effective tax. While if you have income that is taxable in Hungary, like interest income or royalty income, then that US income tax is creditable, up to the amount of the Hungarian tax on that income. Okay, so I think in terms of just establishing a company in the US from a Hungarian perspective, there's really no big dramas there. I think what we really have to consider is when you have funds flowing back from the US to Hungary, and how you plan into that to make sure that's sort of effective and you're not hit with double taxation. So that was, a very, very high level overview. As I've mentioned, every single topic we touched on, we could spend like half an hour or an hour on the treaty, on the withholding tax, on the federal income tax system, on the choice of entity, on how flow through entities are taxed. But I think, like some of my colleagues said, the objective here is to sort of, give you a highlight and sort of give you an indication of the types of things you have to think through. So hopefully that was helpful, and you know, I'm available after the session to answer any questions you might have, or you'll have my contact details on the slide. So please feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.
So after the tax considerations, let's talk about the legal framework. We will hear the legal considerations from John Parkerson, who is an attorney at law, but he also happens to be the honorary consul of Atlanta. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to the U.S. Commercial Service for including me in this program, and thank you to Budapest Chamber of Commerce and Industry and other Hungarian American Chamber of Commerce and other entities that are here. I'm going to tell you everything that one needs to know about U.S. law in 15 minutes, and just to prove that, I actually start my timer now. But I am John Parkerson, and I'm an international business attorney at Hall Booth Smith in Atlanta, Georgia, which is in the southeast part of the United States. So if I sound my accent's a little bit different from Neil, it's because we're from other opposite sides of the world practically when it comes to that kind of thing. We're Southerners, and there's something cultural that goes along with that, I think. This is, oh, and I have a slide. That's good. Now the next trick is to figure out how to work it. And that seems to be a trick for me. There we are. Well, I just wanted to reiterate that I think Neil Pickett covered many of the points that he left off at the point where Hungarians company might come to see me, because they've already, the business has already performed its market entry analysis, hopefully has a business plan of some type. It's considered which markets best fit their growth strategy, and they've considered how to implement that strategy. And they've taken into account, of course, factors that are unique to their company, to your company, to increase market share and revenue, of course. So you've assessed these things. You may even have assessed or thought about what kind of entity do I need to establish in the U.S.? And here we're all touching on this area in one way or another. Entity types kind of important, but all of this depends to some extent on what's the nature of your business. Are you going to be exporting to the United States? Are you going to license some sort of specialized know-how, your intellectual property, to a local partner? Are you going to seek to establish some sort of franchise operation, FDI, foreign direct investment, or strategic alliance? It just all depends. Are you thinking of sending a manager from Hungary to oversee part of this initial operations, or are you going to hire U.S. employees, or maybe you don't need employees or anyone there at all? Several companies that I represent in my legal practice, until they've gotten to the point where they want to establish some sort of premises as their headquarters office in the United States, that mail comes to my desk. We just use my law firm sometimes as the mailing address until the company's ready to establish their own address in the United States. I think one of the key things you want to do right offhand, of course, is engage local legal counsel. We'll call them local counsel. We're talking about U.S. legal counsel. And you want a law firm to handle your affairs just as your company would do a due diligence on any potential partner that you may have. You need to do due diligence with respect to the law firm that you might eventually engage, because they're all different. They come different sizes, different qualities. And, you know, as a general rule, you probably want to pick a law firm that is located in the state in the United States where you're going to be doing business, where your concentration is, where your headquarters is going to be. It's not a legal requirement that you use a law firm in that state, but most of these initial matters with which you're going to be dealing, whether it's corporate law, you know, entity establishment, or a series of initial transactions in which you might be engaged, are governed by state law. So it's very useful to have attorneys that are licensed to practice law in that particular state. I've actually established businesses in Delaware, which I'm not authorized to do as a lawyer, but I can tell you Delaware law, for example, is very similar to Georgia law. Georgia law grew out of that tradition that was established there. But these are some of the issues that you probably want to think about. And to know something about the U.S. laws and how they operate, I think you have to know something about our federal system in the U.S. This has been mentioned several times here already. There are 50 separate states in the United States, and each has its own body of law. What's good is that each of these states have laws have more in common than differences. So as a general rule, if you're in Georgia and you have issues in Alabama or South Carolina or Tennessee, you notice I'm focusing on the southeast region, the laws are going to be generally the same, but there are some differences in the details of those laws. And you need to have a legal counsel that's qualified to practice law where you are going to be located. Now, you might be doing business across the United States, not a problem, because when you execute contracts, for example, if you're trying to sell a particular good or service in the United States, your contract can identify, it can designate which state's law is going to apply to that contract. And I'm going to touch on that principle in just a moment. But this federal system, what makes the states so generally common in the way the laws are written across state boundaries is that they evolved, those laws evolved from the English common law, as we called it. I don't know if you've ever studied this in school or heard mentioned, but common law as opposed to civil law system, which was based on the Napoleonic Code, which is most common in European countries, with the exception, of course, of Great Britain, which is or isn't a European country. We don't know. But this English common law means that most of our laws have a common legal tradition. So they're going to be, the differences are going to be in the small details as you cross state boundaries. You want qualified lawyers. You want lawyers with whom you can establish trust quickly. Often it doesn't come very quickly. Often it comes after a few months. And you know, you always can change law firms if you don't feel like you're on the same, you don't have the same level of thinking as your law firm that you've engaged. Find another one, change law firms. But I think trust is very important. You need to feel comfortable with the lawyer whom you may call almost on a daily basis if you're starting up operations in the United States. I hate to say it before a Hungarian audience, but my largest legal client is a Czech company, a manufacturer, and usually it's my first call in the morning because of the 6-hour time difference is from Prague. So I'm comfortable. I know to expect morning calls from my European clients. But it took a little while, I have to admit, before that firm in the Czech Republic felt 100% comfortable with me. I think we went through a few billings with a lot of initial questions about hours that I may have billed before that client became comfortable that I was not trying to cheat them or overbill or do anything of that nature. So we established trust eventually. And in fact, I intend to visit that client this summer when I come back to Europe. I think you need to ask about certain things about billing rates. You need to be comfortable that the law firm is not going to gouge you. Do you know that word, that English term? It's not going to overbill you. One common problem or complaint that I've faced from time to time is, how many lawyers do you have working on my single little issue? This may seem like this is a simple issue. Why do you need a team? You don't need a team of lawyers to do this. Usually you have a single point of contact. That lawyer has the expertise and views you as his or her client, even though you hire the law firm to perform the services for you. I mean, I feel very close and to this Czech company that I mentioned. That is my client. What I do is if for example, that client has an issue that I don't feel like I have the expertise in a specific area to address. Fortunately, my firm is large enough, size doesn't matter, but the depth of experience across the firm is what's important. I can walk down the hallway and grab my intellectual property lawyer. I'll say, I have a contract here for the sale of something that has that pretty high technology, and I just want a second set of eyes to look at these intellectual property provisions, because that's not my particular area of expertise. So you're going to look for that when you engage a law firm. How broad, how deep is the expertise in a number of areas? Very important. And finally, on this particular note, before I move on to this topic, I think it's important that you engage a lawyer or a law firm that has some international expertise. Cultural sensitivity is so important in our business. I've miscommunicated so many times with my European clients, and we have to go back and sort of clarify, what are we doing? You know, are we on the same wavelength with respect to what the issue is? I think you need to know, and your law firm that you engage needs to have this type of cultural sensitivity and open mind, knowing that things are not done exactly the same way in Hungary as they're done in the United States, and vice versa. Neither is better than the other. Unfortunately, too many U.S. law firms have such a predominantly domestic practice that they don't understand or don't make an effort to learn how to communicate with the clients. And I think that is such an important factor. To me, I was an international law specialist from all of my career. My undergraduate major was European history. I studied in Spain for a while. This was my passion, to work in the international environment. I wouldn't have been a lawyer if I couldn't work in an international environment. That hook came first prior to my wanting to practice law. That's the most important thing to me. Well, we talked about, you're going to ask one of the first questions you're going to ask your attorney is, what kind of legal entity should I establish? And thank you, Deloitte and Citibank and other presenters who've touched on that issue already today, because I can tell you, we know that entity establishment's always on a new company's minds. Keep in mind that there are 50 different states, as we've emphasized. And so you're not just your type of entity, which might be a corporation or a limited liability company or some sort of partnership. And there are other, sort of blends of these types of entities. You need to think about where that entity is going to be located, because each state has its own body of corporate law. And we talked about the similarities between states, but there are details in the laws. When companies come to me, often from Europe especially, they may say, well, we've been told that we need to establish a corporation, or we've been told that we need to set up an LLC. One size does not fit all. You need to have that thorough discussion, not just with your lawyer, but here's where lawyers generally are not tax specialists. They can perform the legal functions. They can register your entity and do all that type of work. But that lawyer, if they're not conversing with a good tax and accounting firm that can help advise on the tax consequences, then that lawyer's not doing a very good job. I view it as a team effort between the tax and accounting firm and the legal firm. So just notice that, or note that you need to hire both a good tax and accounting firm and a good legal firm. Once we've decided the type of entity, then the lawyers can get your company registered with the state agencies. They can find your business, help you determine what's going to be your initial business address and all different kinds of issues. And there are, this is minutia. In my final minute or so, I just wanted to address very quickly another area that I think we need to focus on as new companies doing business, because I don't know if you want to sell your product. It may be a good, or it may be a service, or I don't know whether you want to do something else, have some other establishment. Maybe you just simply want a partnership with a U.S. company, but you're going to have contracts that are going to govern those relationships. And there are a few things about U.S. contract law that I wanted you to note. One, and that's 15 minutes. We're finished. No, I'm kidding. I guess I'll go a minute over. Contracts memorialize a deal. Make sure that they are written very clearly. In the United States, we have something called freedom of contract. Why, we have these extraordinarily long contracts by comparison with European contracts. Why? Because we have this common law system where contract principles that apply in the United States are based on judge-made law, not necessarily statutory law. In your civil law system, you have a much more sophisticated set of principles that are written in statutes. So this freedom of contract means that the parties negotiate the minutia of the business relationship, and some of that minutia is covered in European laws by statute, and you don't necessarily have to negotiate all of the same types of things. So we tend to do overkill and put so much in a contract that it's intended to minimize the risk to the extent possible. Don't take your contracts from home, from Hungary, and try to apply them. Simply have them translated into English and try to use them in the United States. They're not sufficient. They're not, you need to follow the traditions of the US law in those contracts. Why? Because if they're not clearly written, if you don't set out every aspect of the relationship, it may result in litigation in the US. And we've all heard about that nasty topic, that the United States is an overly litigious society. And I wanted you to note that in your contracts, you can even set out things like which state's law applies, where will a dispute be heard? Will it be heard in a court in that state, or you could choose arbitration. You can apply with arbitration all kinds of international arbitration rules like the International Chamber of Commerce and so forth. Your contracts cover these risk issues, I call them. For example, products. Maybe there are defects in your products. Well, we have products liability law, and it allocates the risk between the parties and so forth under indemnification provisions, extremely important in US contracts. So you need to craft a choice of law, choice of forum that favors your client. I'm speaking from the lawyer's perspective, that favors you. If you establish your entity in the state of Georgia, then I want Georgia law to apply, and I want any dispute to be heard and decided in some court in Georgia, or it could be an arbitration body in Georgia. But the fact is, you get to choose under this freedom of contract which body of law is going to apply. And that will be enforced in any state in the United States. If there's a dispute and somebody tries to sue you in California, when you have a Georgia choice of forum to hear the dispute, the court will defer to Georgia and will apply Georgia law. That's upheld by courts generally. Consider alternative ways of resolving disputes. Consider in your contract how you terminate them. And then finally, my final remark is ask the law firm if they have somebody who's qualified to advise on labor and employment and other human resources kinds of legislation. Maybe you need an immigration lawyer, somebody who knows about EB-5, somebody who knows about the various kinds of visas under which one of your employees could come to the United States to oversee the operation. I'll be happy to discuss any other issues. This is also, I understand, in the body of slides, and I have a written presentation that goes along with it that goes into greater detail. So happy to answer questions later. Thank you.
In the next presentation, we will hear about the lessons learned from the perspective of a successful Hungarian company that has already established presence in the US. That's Continest, specialized in foldable containers. And they actually attended the Select USA Summit twice. And last year, we are very proud of them because they became the winners of the pitching sessions in the Clean Tech session. So the floor is yours, Vidor. Please come over here.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Vidor Kis-Márton. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Continest Technologies. As Eva mentioned, a Hungarian-based, but currently more and more international engineering and construction production company. Okay, let's see. How do I slide this? Just press. John, how do I do this?
Oh, it's on the right-hand side of the...
Here?
It's the
wrong remote? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. And it's over there as well. Okay, so very shortly about us. I think right now I have like two hats: lessons learned in the US as a Hungarian company, and a participant and the winner of the Clean Tech pitch of the 2022 Select USA contest. Continest is a privately owned company. We raised more than 8 million euros in 2019 and 2022 from Hungarian venture capital funds, and our product is what you can see on the picture on the screen. It's a foldable container technology. Initially, we're focusing on containerized solutions which provide temporary infrastructure solutions, so not the shipping container industry that would everybody think about. The good news is that if you're interested in shipping, that's something that we're actually covering from 2022 as well. A couple of numbers about how we evolved since 2019. You see the growth in our revenue, and another important detail is that you can see the average of our export activity, which is I think 1 year difference. So in 2020 it was under 80%, but we have an average of 80% of export, which is obviously very helpful for us when the forint is 430 compared to the euro, for example, or to the US dollar. One of the very important progresses or initiatives in our life was when we decided to shift from contract manufacturing to owning our own production facility. This was important because initially, as a young company, obviously you don't have the capital means to build up your own factory. That's why we partially raised our initial fundraising round in 2019. Currently, we own 2 production units in Székelyhújfehérvár. I don't know if you're familiar. John had the honor, and Eva also the possibility to see it. We're very proud of it. It's let's say it's a Industry 4.0 facility, which is going to be finished this year. So actually, the process of production is still ongoing. I'm going to say just one thing about this slide. So basically, on the bottom right picture, you can see what Continent's added value is. We're cutting 80% of the space that you actually need to reposition our units when they are in a folded position, and opening them and closing them takes roughly 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes per each single unit. So this is basically the background, the know-how of our technology. The solutions vary from very basic, so for example, on-site offices, to different other applications, as you can see on the right upper corner, for example, a very pretty bar, or a COVID lab at the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, in the middle bottom line, or a field hospital in Uganda that we built for WHO, for example. I think picture says more than a word. So on the left-hand side, you can see a picture that shows 20 10-feet units instead of 4, and 10 20-feet units instead of 2. So that's our 5 times multiplicator compared to the typical technologies. There's also good news from certain end user point of view is that we already have experience in air freight. So we already shipped containers, foldable containers with cargo planes. This specific project was from Belgium to Israel, to Tel Aviv during the pandemic. And there are possibilities that we're going to use this way again, for example, with the unfortunate earthquakes that happened recently in Turkey and Syria. I already covered this side, so I don't want to waste too much time here. Another reason why the factory was important for us is that once we had the factory transited from a nice idea and nice guys situation to a relevant industrial player that can be considered as a partner, for example, for US entities that I will talk about soon. Another important effort that we did during the last 2 years, and I think this is going to contribute greatly to our US long-term plans, is that we developed a so-called digital twin for our current factory. Digital twin means that we digitalized and simulated the whole production process of our technology in a way that it can be translated into another facility, similar facility anywhere in the world. So in more simple terms, this is a technological transfer project, but we're not only able to give the production technology by means of designs of the containers, but we can hand over also the whole manufacturing platform of these units, and not just as a layout design, but as budget, equipment, incoming and outgoing parts as well. I think we talked about, or we heard about patenting. So Neil talked about you have to patent, you have to register in the US. This is our patent map, let's put it that way. I have my own opinion about patents. I think patents are good when you're talking to investors, corporations, or the government. That's where you need to have a patent to prove them that actually what you're selling to them is proprietary to you. Other than that, patents are not really providing protection per se, especially if you're in a hardware industry as we are, because actually by patenting your solution, you're exposing yourself because you have to give a description of your technology during the patenting process, right? So patenting is a double-edged sword. Nevertheless, we did invest significant resources, time-wise and financial. So if you want to have like an international patent, a global patent, make sure that you have the necessary resources, because in foreign terms, it's going to cost you several tens of millions of forints, and it's going to take you several years as well. So it's not going to happen from one day to the other. But this is where we are. with IP on a global platform, and this is where we are with our physical presence. You can also already see 3 dots on the North American map. West Coast is Los Angeles, Long Beach. That's where our second delivery is going to be on its way, I think, this Friday, to a very interestingly Hungarian-owned American business, which is very successfully growing on its own way in the US and are teaming up with us. East Coast is New York and North Carolina. New York is our other customer from New York City. North Carolina is our contract manufacturing, one of our contract manufacturing partners. And parallel to the US, we have a presence in Toronto, Ontario as well, where we are initiating now sales processes with different industrial and non-industrial players. You can see a lot of other dots. For example, Australia, very interestingly, it's picking up as a very interesting market, given the size, the vast areas of rural and uninhabited regions. Plus, as we learned, the huge cost of manufacturing, physical manufacturing that Australia has. So actually it makes commercial sense to export something manufactured in Hungary that we can sell on full price, pay for the shipment, and still our partners are making a very healthy margin on it down under. And then a little bit about our history with Select USA. So since we started operating in this business, we thought that the US will become a relevant market for us, and therefore we started to develop a relationship with the team of Eva and her boss, previous boss, and now Neil. And as you can see with Ambassador Kornstein. And the first event was the European Procurement Forum, which is not necessarily related to Select USA. It's the European, but I actually recommend it to all of you here if you're thinking about going to the US. This is more focusing on United Nations, which is headquartered in New York. And it gives basically your platform to present your services or your goods to the procurement people of the UN. On the right-hand side picture, you can see me pitching in DC, 2019. This was the year when we thought that we'll actually start entering the US market, but we were not aware that COVID is just around the corner and the US is going to be shut for 2 years, which we'll know about. In this year, we came second on the pitch event where I was really surprised because we are hardware, and hardware is usually very not unsexy. IT and biotech and these kind of things are always predominant. And actually it was a Spanish biotech company, Continest, and an Israeli, Spanish IT, Hungarian engineering company, and an Israeli biotech company who won in 2019. Even considering COVID, this was a super opportunity for us because we managed to initiate relationships during Select USA that keep going till now. And very interestingly, not so much with private organizations, but for example, with one of the organizations under Department of Justice who are actually involved in retrofitting containers and are very much interested in having Continest in their production portfolio. So for us, it was a very good investment. After which it turned out that entering the US virtually, it doesn't work. Actually, at least for a company like us who have like physical products and you have to go there. And we've been also told that if you want to do business in the US, you have to go to the US. Like you have to be there physically present. And yes, 10,000 forints is not going to take you too long in Manhattan or in Venice Beach. But these are lessons learned. And then 2022 came, so COVID suddenly disappeared, and we managed to to return again on the invitation of Eva and her team. And this time you can see another face on the picture, because at this time we already had an entity incorporated in the US with a CEO who is based in the US. So I made a step backwards. I'm helping on the sideways, but right now we have a Ukrainian American childhood friend of mine who's acting as the CEO of Continest and is representing us on the market. And what you see here is actually his pitching contest that we won against, somehow surprisingly. I'm always a little bit inconfident. I need to learn more about this from our American friends. But it was a great experience, and once again, it gave us huge PR opportunities. What's out for you if you win, for example, this contest? For example, we got a lot of services free of charge, from like legal consultancy, marketing, PR, communication, whatnot. So I encourage you to do it. And plus, if you go to the US and you're a small company, up and coming company like us, you're probably going to face investors that you want to pitch. And this is a great opportunity to drill yourself. And actually, you could end up getting some offers from this pitching contest. We didn't, so we're now getting fundraising from outside sources, not from Select USA contacts. But there is an opportunity for that as well, because the judges in this contest sometimes, in my case, when I did it in 2019, I think 4 out of 6 judges were from Silicon Valley, so they were like hardcore investors. And then lessons learned. So I have, let's say, the be aware of section, the cons, and then the pros. So from my side, like, you see, the market size on my list is both a pro and a con in the US. Like, obviously, the US is the largest market, or not obviously, but it is, which is a great opportunity, but it's a great threat as well. Like, where do you start? Do you start on the West Coast? Do you start on the East Coast? Do you start in Midwest? You go to Texas? Where do you go? Even if you decided on location, which industry? Like, in our case, are we going to start with Department of Defense, with FEMA, with United Rentals? So it is really difficult, and it takes time to understand how you can address the market. What is your best angle to it? Regulatory challenges. So lawyers, we have a lessons learned section in lawyers. For example, we spent around $40,000, and this is no joke, $40,000 on legal advisory, and they couldn't actually give us the right corporate structure. And I know this sounds silly, and my time is up, but you really have to be careful how you choose your advisors. I'm not pointing anybody to talk to John, although we know each other a long time. But for example, our second law firm was recommended to us by our corporate M&A lawyer from Budapest who used to work with them. So there was a trust, there was a relationship, and that worked out great. Sales and after sales, you need local support, right? So you cannot sell stuff from Hungary and then have nobody to back it up. Even I think if it's a software. In our case, definitely we're selling hardware, so you need to have somebody. If something goes wrong, they can go there, take care of it, fix it, repair it, replace it, whatever. That's a challenge as well. And the cultural differences. So that's, I lived in the US, I worked in the US previously. So for me, the US is like my second home, but this is not obvious for all Hungarian companies or all Hungarian entrepreneurs. So I would say that that's around that. Put their UL compliance, so that's a picture. UL compliance took us 4 months. So we had already our first shipment in the US, we had buyers for it, and then we figured out that we knew about the 110 versus 230 volt system changes. It took us 4 months to figure it out. What are the pros when going to the US? Obviously market size. Now on a positive note, it's huge. Pricing compared to Europe, even Scandinavia or Western Europe, pricing is very, very attractive in the United States. So margins can be very, very interesting. I know that there were questions about how open the American business communities to European or non-American solutions. There absolutely are. So there's no prejudice about you being a European non-American industry. You have to have a value proposal that makes sense, obviously, for them, but there's absolute openness and the well-known entrepreneurial spirit of the American business environment. So thank you for your time. I think I only had like 1 minute extra. And similarly to John, you can find me outside, and I'm more than happy to talk to you, especially to Citibank, about opening an account, because we did open an account for our LLC, but not for a corporation, because Bank of America thought that they don't know us well enough, but also to anybody else from you. Thank you very much.
In the next 45 minutes, we will hear some presentations from state representatives. The first would be Pennsylvania, so I give the floor to Karolina Kaptur.
Good afternoon. My name is Karolina Kaptur, and I am the authorized representative of Pennsylvania, covering Central and Eastern Europe. I would like to thank to all the organizers for the invitation and the opportunity to tell you a little bit about business opportunities in Pennsylvania. In my today's presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of Pennsylvania as your potential gateway to the American market. I will also tell you a little bit about the key industries in Pennsylvania and its two major cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And I'm also going to tell you how we can help you in your journey to the American market. All right, so why you should consider Pennsylvania when thinking about expansion to the US? 3 reasons: location, economy, and relatively low operating costs. Location. Pennsylvania is located in the US Northeast, which is the most densely populated and also the wealthiest part of the United States. Its major city, Philadelphia, is just less than 2 hours away from New York and Washington. Pennsylvania gives you the access to 13 million of the consumers within the state, but within just 1 day drive, you are able to reach nearly 40% of the US population from Pennsylvania, and on top of that, nearly 60% of Canadian population. So to prove this argument, I would like to show you a slide which presents the density of the population in the United States. So as you can see, majority of population is actually concentrated east from the Mississippi River, and the highest concentration is actually in the Northeast, on the metropolis from Boston through New York, Philadelphia to Washington, and Pennsylvania gives you an excellent position to access that part of the market. The picture is actually pretty similar if we look at the concentration of business. You are probably familiar with Fortune 500 list, right? So this is the list of the largest corporations in America. So Fortune magazine has prepared a map where every circle indicates the location of a company headquarters, and the size of the circle actually represents the company revenue. So again, the majority of the business is concentrated east of the Mississippi River, and Pennsylvania gives you an excellent access to the larger cluster in the northeast coast, and also a smaller cluster in the Midwest. In terms of the size of the economy, Pennsylvania's gross domestic product is over 800 billion US dollars. So if Pennsylvania was actually a country, it would be in the top 20 wealthiest countries in the world. Its economy is actually comparable or even bigger than the economy of Switzerland and Turkey. And according to Bloomberg, Pennsylvania has the most diversified business portfolio in the United States. The best part of it is that you can have all of that with a relatively low cost. So, of course, American market is far more expensive than the Hungarian market, but still the cost of living in Pennsylvania is the lowest in the northeast of the US. And you could also see on Neil's slide the minimal wages in particular states, and Pennsylvania was also a less expensive area in that part of the U.S. Its largest cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, both have lower office rent costs than the U.S. average. And for example, if you compare it to office spaces in New York, they are 3 times as expensive, and it's just 2 hours away from Philadelphia. So I mentioned the diversified business portfolio of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has been traditionally a manufacturing state, and right now it's the 8th largest manufacturing state in the whole country. The top industries are fabricated metals, food processing, machinery, chemicals, plastics, and rubber. And one of the reasons for that is, especially for the chemical sector, for the plastics and rubber, is the abundant supply of low-cost natural gas. So as you can see on this slide, Pennsylvania basically lies on 2 large natural gas formations. And this is not a common knowledge, but this is Pennsylvania is the 2nd largest energy producer in the United States. Another sector that I would like to highlight is life science. So you can see on this slide the companies which are active and present. They have their facilities in Pennsylvania. So, the usual suspects like Bayer, Teva, or AstraZeneca are all located in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania is the top 5 in the whole United States in terms of funding obtained, in terms of R&D expenditures, in terms of VC for life science, and also employment in the sector and the number of bioscience-related patents. Specifically, Philadelphia is the most important hub in Pennsylvania for life sciences. Here, Philadelphia is a leader in biotech, pharma, digital health, medical device, gene therapy. It is a home to 200 hospitals, 7 medical schools, 4 National Cancer Institute designated treatment centers. So this is a top hub for life sciences. And nearly 80% of US pharmaceutical and biotech companies have their presence in Philadelphia. Pittsburgh is also a life science hub, but a smaller one. It's a fast-growing one, though. This is also a very interesting hub for all tech companies. a lot of Silicon Valley companies actually became more and more active in Pittsburgh. For them to get coders or developers in the Silicon Valley was simply too difficult and too expensive. So companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, they all have their large offices in Pittsburgh nowadays. This is an amazing place for all companies that have something to do with artificial intelligence. Actually, the Carnegie Mellon University was a birthplace of artificial intelligence a few decades ago. This is also a great place for companies working in the area of autonomous vehicles, or robotaxis, as they are called sometimes. So this is a place where, for example, Uber tests their autonomous driving solutions. That's on the streets of Pittsburgh. There are more interesting industries, but I am happy to tell you more about it after all the presentations. As a representative of Pennsylvania, I would be happy to provide free of charge assistance to your company in terms of establishing your business, your legal entity in the US, providing information on costs, average wages, business tax structure, and any information you might find relevant. We can also help you to find a local office, also in the co-working spaces, inform you about incentives and acceleration programs, and help you get in touch with partners that you will need for your successful business development in the United States. I am available for any individual discussions and questions after the presentations, so please feel free to approach me and talk individually about your specific case. Thank you.
The next speaker represents the South Carolina Department of Commerce. He's from the European office. Josh Seberg will talk about the incentive programs and what business opportunities are available in South Carolina.
Thank you, Eva. Hello, everybody. Joshua Seberg from the South Carolina office based in Munich. And you're going to hear, there are a couple other states coming up after me, and you're going to hear a little repetition with, these, for example, locational, what do they call them? These radius. I think now I have the wrong remote. I see what you mean. It's like there are two remotes. This one? Put it down. Put it down. I just didn't push it hard enough. All right. Ah, there. Okay. Thanks. No worries. All right. So we're located in Munich. Our head office is in Columbia, the capital of South Carolina. We have offices all over Asia, as you can see as well. We're well represented throughout the world. I'm not going to go over this at all because, look, all of these states offer all of these services. Okay, let me tell you this. Workforce assistance, helping you with site selection, finding the information you need. It's a lot like what Neil described the USCS does with helping you find data and all this stuff to help you with your market entry, make it more smooth. Introduction to local officials, of course, all of that. The only thing I want to really point out here is, the workforce component, which there's more on that a little later. And the workforce training program basically on this slide. So I'll get back to that in a moment. Here it is, as promised. So yeah, we're right in the middle of the Eastern Seaboard between Miami and New York. There's Pennsylvania up there. Georgia is just south of us. He's coming up next. And yeah, I mean, you know, we're located within a day's drive of something like 65 to 70% of the U.S. population. So, and then, well, look at that. Okay, so there's the U.S. population once more. So yeah, that's right. We're all in the East. So that's where you want to be. And it's no coincidence that, you know, Pennsylvania, Georgia, I think Indiana is going to come on digitally, and South Carolina are here, all in the East. Yeah, catering to European companies. It's yeah, that's not a coincidence. That's where all the European companies are settling. Infrastructure, one thing I want to point out here is, well, yep, again, everyone's connected with roads and rails, and you can get around very easily. I can't name one state that just has a completely crappy infrastructure. Wyoming? I don't know. So somewhere west of the Mississippi, certainly, right? But one thing I want to point out here is the Port of Charleston recently deepened to a nice 15.8 meters. So come check it out, ship your stuff there. And 2 inland ports with direct rail lines from the Port of Charleston into the Greenville-Spartanburg area. It's that red line up at the top, or the red dotted line. That's where BMW has its plant. It's the largest BMW manufacturing facility in the world, including in Germany. And then there's another one on the eastern half of the state, so you can get your products around pretty quickly and out of the country, more importantly, in and out. Yeah, we're talking about low cost all around. Construction, cost of living, average wages, if you're talking about, you know, more, you know, labor intensive operations setting up. Power rates were among the lowest unionization. And, you know, I think it was John, and one of your last slides, you talked about like right to work, and you didn't express it directly, but that might come up too, is, you know, what's the union situation looking like? Most of the states are right to work states, which means employees can choose whether they want to belong to a union or not. So we are. And then, yeah, low or no taxes on various aspects of doing business. Growing industries, well, these are basically a highlight of all of our industries. But I wanted to get into a couple more in a moment here. Here's that international presence I was talking about. It's pretty impressive. I mean, we're only a state of about, you know, 5 million people, and we've got about 1,200 foreign companies, over 700 are European. So don't squint your eyes too closely. You won't see any Hungarian flags. I'm sorry, but you can be the first. Yeah, some of the well-known companies. Again, BMW smack in the middle. That's one of our biggest ones. Continental Tire, Michelin, lots of tire, lots of auto there. And here is kind of where our automotive cluster is. Again, it's really focused up in the north west of the state. Having said that, Volvo is down near the Charleston areas. Is Mercedes? They make their Sprinter there. Some OEMs around the area. Aerospace is also big with us. Anyone interested in aerospace at all? Is that a thing for anyone here? Well, of course, Neil. All right. But it is really big. I mean, you know, the F-16 is made there. The Boeing Dreamliner is made there. We have, you know, the OEMs and the supporting companies to back that up. Advanced materials, of course, when you're talking about lightweighting, you know, especially with e-vehicles and aerospace plays a big role. If it's important for you, we can talk about it. And a couple, yeah, these are some industry associations and research institutes that we work with along that line. And yes, we also have some life sciences. We're actually it's the fastest growing sector for us in the Southeast. So it's more kind of like up and coming. But having said that, we really do have our fair share of life sciences companies as well. Again, clustered up in the Northwest, but you know, but by the way, the middle is Columbia, the capital, and then down south is Charleston, the port that I mentioned. So that's kind of the big urban centers there. Here we are with the workforce training. you know, everyone's got a workforce training program. Everyone's got an apprenticeship program, a European style apprenticeship program, which they're all great in their own right. One thing that makes South Carolina very unique is this Ready SC program. This takes it kind of a step further. This is really hand-holding and helping you locate and train your workforce from the ground up, not you're setting up a factory and you need an apprentice, you know, skilled at whatever you're doing 2 years later. So take advantage of this if you're looking for, again, you know, if you need 50 plus employees, this is a great program to take advantage of. It's free. We talked about incentives, and I can only, you know, echo what Neil said about, and this, I'm again trying to speak for the group a little bit here. Don't just come and sit at our table and say like, how much can you give me? You know, it's all based on how many jobs you're looking at creating, and typically the capital investment that you're bringing into the project. And then we would be more than happy to provide you with an incentive summary, you know, within really a few days. So if you fill out, you know, some details of what you're looking at investing in, what kind of jobs, how many jobs you're looking at creating, we can give you a pretty good idea, you know, on the front end, what kind of incentives you could take advantage of. Again, site selection, you know, everyone's got buildings and property that you can greenfield on. We got them too. So, and this is the one thing I want to tell you about. So, you know, we talk about the ideal thing of opening, coming over and creating hundreds of jobs, opening a factory and taking advantage of sweet incentives. I know that's not for everybody here, and this might be for you. This is our landing pad program. We work with all of our regional alliance partners to, you know, set up a place around the state. We have like 8 or 9 of them around the state where small companies wanting, you know, very basic market entry, like an office, you know, a 1 to 5 person sales team, maybe some very light distribution or something like that. We can help you get started at that level as well through our landing pad program. So hit me up and I'll give you more details on that. And I think that was it. Yeah. So questions not now at the table out there. I'll be out there with the rest of the state. So please, yeah, come say hi. Thanks.
So our next speaker is Mr. Sergio Dominguez, who represents the state of Georgia European office. Sergio?
Thank you for attending today. My name is Sergio Dominguez from the state of Georgia. I am here on behalf of Georgia's Department of Economic Development, which is in essence the equivalent of a regional Ministry of Economy. The state of Georgia has maintained an official European representation for the last 50 years. In fact, 2023, we celebrate our 50th anniversary. We have 12 international offices around the world. Our European office is the largest. I have 3 images here that really represent what the Department of Economic Development does. Tourism on the left-hand side, come see us, come visit us in Atlanta or Savannah or anywhere in between. Economic development, investment, and export. Governor Kemp here with the groundbreaking of Georgia's largest ever investment of Hyundai in the Savannah area. And then Stranger Things. Isn't that a strange thing? Georgia is a premier film location anywhere around the world. If you've seen Stranger Things, it's been filmed in Georgia. If you've watched The Walking Dead, filmed in Georgia. If you've watched any of the Marvel films, recent Marvel films, filmed in Georgia. We are outpacing Hollywood simply because we have a pro-business and a favorable environment for a lot of these productions. Gateway to the US and global markets, and I'm going to tell you why. Here's this map again, except my state is highlighted. All right, so let me tell you something about that little orange area there. Georgia is a coastal state, the largest state east of the Mississippi River, bigger than Florida by landmass. You see the color, you see the lights. This picture was taken at night from space. What does this picture tell you? It tells you population density. It tells you wealth concentration. It tells you industry or industrial capacity. If you were to superimpose all of those other maps on this map, it's very similar. So there it is. The big bright spot that you see there is Atlanta. Atlanta has more people in its MSA, in its metropolitan statistical area, than our neighboring states. We move people and cargo better than anybody. Okay? I'm going to tell you. We have the busiest and most efficient airport in the world, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport. Over 100 million passengers pass through this airport every year. You would expect some kind of statistic to come out of a Chinese or a Gulf airport. No, it comes out of an American airport in Atlanta. For folks that are thinking about a sales office in the US, a lot of small companies consider Atlanta because every single day, this airport connects you directly to 150 destinations. You don't have to connect anywhere. You could come home and have dinner the same day. We move a lot of goods by truck and by rail. Every single year, we move over $900 billion worth of goods through Georgia. These are some of the infrastructural assets that we have, the Port of Savannah, intermodality. Intermodality basically means that you could drive your truck to a facility and it's put on a train that is set either to another intermodal facility or to a port. And it's pretty well developed. If there's something that America doesn't do well, it's passenger rail. What we do very well is cargo, freight rail. And it's very modern. And in fact, east of the Mississippi, there are two carriers that are responsible for moving goods. That's Norfolk Southern, which is headquartered in Atlanta, and CSX. Let's keep moving. The Southeast, very important. I mentioned Atlanta. If you were to add up all of the GDPs of these states, we're talking about the 4th largest economy in the world. People are moving here, businesses are moving here, and the projected growth is astounding. One of the good pieces of news that came out of the pandemic is that Atlanta passed Miami as the largest metropolitan statistical area in the South. That's big news for us. It's good news. Some of the statistics, you'll get these slides later. Population growth on path to grow, job growth, cost of living and cost of doing business is important because when you see all of this activity coming into the region, you expect inflationary effects. We are working hard to keep costs stable in the state. Georgia's Fortune 500 footprint. We have 18 Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered in Georgia. You may have heard of Coca-Cola or UPS or Delta. These companies also reflect some of our target industries, whether it's financial services with NCR, whether it's paper and pulp with graphic packaging, logistics with UPS, aviation with Delta, agribusiness and food processing with Coca-Cola, energy with the Southern Company, and others. 18 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Georgia. 90% of all Fortune 500 companies have some form of a presence or a subsidiary in the state already. Talking about your sales office, you have access to a growing business community, one that is also international. We can talk about the talent that we have, the people. Manufacturing is the backbone of the economy. Obviously, we are very much an agricultural state, but over the years we've grown and we've modernized our economy to accommodate and to position ourselves for advanced manufacturing. Same thing goes for the talent that will staff your companies on the ground. Again, statistics that reflect this and that I wanted to share with you today. Workforce training. You know, the three things that are on everybody's mind, especially for companies, are labor, logistics, and energy, now more than ever. Logistics we covered, we're #1 there. That's undisputed. Energy, we continue to be very competitive simply because we believe in a diverse energy mix. For those where that may be relevant, we have one of the few sites around the world where 2 new nuclear reactors are actually being built in Augusta. And then labor. What we do is we assess, especially now that the unemployment rate is so low, we assess who's unemployed and who's underemployed. And we work in conjunction with the Department of Labor, with our technical college system to help recruit and select and train your staff. The other hidden treasure that we have is our veterans. A member of the armed forces in the United States, when he or she retires, is at the prime of their career. They're in their early 40s. This, for us, is or contributes tremendously to our talent pipeline. And these are people with advanced skill sets. They are disciplined and they are committed to the work at hand. This is a little bit more. I'll skip through this. Just emphasizes what I just said. Incentives, and I think Joshua covered this very well. I want to just add a few things to what John said, and also to what Neil said about pitting states against each other because we're so competitive. A word of advice: if you come to us and you're not looking at another state and the project is not competitive, we don't have to give you incentives because we know you're coming. So make the project competitive if you want to be eligible for incentives. Okay, that's one piece of advice. Incentives, there are those that are formulated and stipulated and that are available. We have a brochure that shares all this. But really, the incentives come from 2 different levels. They come from the state level, which is the statutory, and then you have to look at the community, where they have more discretion as to how they support your project at the local level. That's another thing to take into account. And to build on John's point, the US is comprised of 50 states. The US is also comprised of over 3,000 counties. You will have to pick one of them. And each one of those counties have their own value proposition, they have their own way of attracting companies, and they have their own way of supporting investment in their particular communities. Please exhaust this search when you are looking for a location in the US. The metropolitan statistical area of Atlanta is comprised of 29 counties. Pick one. It's not easy. And there are economic development professionals that are out there, especially at the state level, that offer this support. I also want to underscore the fact that we strongly encourage you to seek local legal support and local accounting support, simply because people like John and others who are based in Georgia understand not only how state law works, but also how the economic development regulations and frameworks work. They know how to maximize your invested dollar in the state. And they bring with that years of expertise. The last thing I'll say is, once your company becomes a Georgia company, or once you enter the US via Georgia, you are a Georgia company. You are as American as apple pie. We don't treat you as, oh, that Hungarian company down the street. No. We set that aside and we treat you as one of ours. And that means that you're also eligible for all of the programs and all of the resources that all of the other Georgia companies are eligible for as well. Let me give you an example. These 12 international offices that we have around the world also have trade representatives. I have a trade representative that sits with me in Munich. She's responsible for Central Europe. I have trade representative colleagues who are trade representatives in Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Korea, Japan, China. If your company is looking to open markets in Latin America, for example, you qualify for that service. Our trade representatives in Brazil will try to identify opportunities for you to sell or to enter in that market through the networks that are existing on the ground. With that, keep it short and sweet. Find me on LinkedIn if you want to scan that QR code, or find me outside. We're here at, all of us are at your disposal to help you. I know the Americans like to promise a lot of free things, but that's really what it is. We're open, we're generous, we want to help you. And at the end of the day, if you decide to go somewhere else, I think it's a win really for the country and for your company as well. So it's in our mutual interest to ensure that you have a good start to your business and to your expansion into the US. So Neil and our hosts here at the Budapest Chamber of Commerce and Industry, thank you so much for having us. I'll see you later. Thank you.
The next and final presentation before the closing remarks would be from Jan Winderman, representing the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. He really wanted to be here in person, but the connection didn't work out very well, so he missed his flight, and he should be here online.
I am. I hope you can hear me well. Yeah. So also from my side, thanks very much to the US Embassy in Budapest and also to the American Hungarian Chamber of Commerce. I was on my way to Budapest this morning, but Lufthansa decided then in Munich not to take me with them over. So I'm back in Berlin now and glad to join you here online. And of course, I hope to see a lot of you again beginning of May in Washington, DC for the Select USA Summit, or anytime soon in Hungary. So my name is Jan-Christoph Wiedemann. I'm leading the European office for the state of Indiana. So as my colleagues from Georgia, South Carolina, and Pennsylvania, my job is to assist you as a European company on your way to the US market. And I cannot see if my presentation is already on the screen.
Not yet. Not yet.
So please give me just a short note if it's there, and then we can start from there. So we have 452 European companies that have invested in the state of Indiana. And normally my first talking point always is that most European companies know where New York is, know where Los Angeles is, maybe then also Florida. Indiana is a little bit more challenging in the beginning if you're not that familiar with the United States. So I always refer to the city of Chicago. So the state of Indiana is right south of Chicago. It's a great state with 6.5 million inhabitants, a very industrialized base. So you'll find excellent workforce and many partners and contacts in our state and in our region. And also, as presented before by Joshua and Sergio, if you see the density of population in the United States, most Europeans that I've worked with in the past 10 years have really chosen the east side of the United States for their entry point to the United States.
Sorry for interrupting you. I would like to just ask you that, would you like to share your presentation on the screen, or it's better for you if we can share?
Yes, let me try that.
Okay, that's fine. We can see.
Very good. Then I'll just go through here. So I mentioned that you can see Indiana here in yellow with driving hours around the state of Indiana. So you can access the whole east part and also the central part of the United States with a 12-hour truck drive. We have a very low unemployment rate, as have the other states in the United States. So workforce is really the main pressing issue for all Europeans, for all international investors, but of course also for the American companies to find great workforce in their region that they're expanding into. The reasons why we have that much international investment in our state, I would say, as mentioned before, the long history of production and the well-educated workforce that we have in our state. Then number two would be low taxes and the overall tax infrastructure. And then of course, the infrastructure in our state to reach not only the surrounding states, but the whole US, the NAFTA region, the whole Americas for your product is essential. On that map, right in the middle is our capital, Indianapolis. We have a fantastic, quite new airport where you can reach most US destinations within a short flying distance. And number four in that list is really the personal support that we as the Indiana Economic Development Corporation can give you as a Hungarian investor in the beginning. So we'll really have a concierge service. We pick you up at the airport, we show you around, show you great sites, show you office buildings, maybe a landing hub in our state where you can start working. And through that personal support, we were able to create a lot of links Also with Hungary over the past years, we had a strong, we have a strong relationship also through governor trips and Secretary of Commerce trips to Budapest, and so we are there on a constant basis. It's not just a one-time event. So I'm based here in Berlin, and I can fly anytime normally to Budapest. Connectivity, I mentioned it a little bit before. So we are called the Crossroads of America. You can reach different regions in Indiana very easily by air. Rail was mentioned before by Sergio. It's not a problem to bring your service and goods from big ports to the central part of the United States. We also have water ports in Indiana, which was also quite interesting for me at the beginning to learn. But through the Great Lakes, you can really ship your goods from Europe all the way to Indiana if you need to. This is just a picture of the international airport, which was finished in 2010. So it's a fairly young airport, very easy to reach and very easy to go from there to all the United States. Diversification in our state, we are, of course, agribusiness state. Agricultural business has a $31 billion impact and still employs 107,000 Hoosiers. That's what people in Indiana call themselves. We are #1 for commercial duck production, as an example, and other agricultural items. Logistic, we are #1 in rail shipments in the United States, #1 for highway accessibility, #1 airport in North America, #2 for largest FedEx hub worldwide. So from a logistics standpoint, I have not heard any complaints of all the European investors over the past years. Advanced manufacturing in Northern Indiana, we are #1 for the global RV, so recreational vehicle production. 80% of the world's recreational vehicles come from Indiana. We're the only state with 3 Japanese car manufacturers. We have the 2nd largest automotive state by GDP. We're the largest state. Life science is very strong. So we just came back with a trip visiting companies also in Switzerland and in Germany, like Roche, for example, who is constantly expanding in our state. And we're the orthopedics capital of the world. So also a lot of suppliers come to Indiana to create, in the beginning, a small manufacturing facility there and expand further. Top 10 for fastest growing tech communities in Indiana. We're able in the past years also to attract a lot of high-tech jobs, for example, from California to come to Indiana to gain from lower wages than you have in central regions like San Francisco. And we're very strong in the aerospace, aviation, and defense sector with companies like Saab, Rolls-Royce, BAE Systems, Raytheon, and GE Aviation, just to give you a short overview there. What also the other speakers mentioned, the availability of trained workforce, educated workforce. I think this is really crucial. With most investors from Europe, we're trying to arrange meetings at the universities, but also at regional community colleges to explain to them how those entities can assist them with acquiring new staff for their facility that are trained in certain areas. This is my contact information here in Berlin. So as mentioned before, if you have a detailed interest in investing, in coming to the United States, don't hesitate to approach me and all the other speakers before me, because the more information and the more support you can get, I think the better are your chances to be successful in this huge market, the United States. Thank you very much.
Hi, it's me again. Sorry. We're done with the formal presentations. I do see on the bottom of this screen, there's 5 questions for the question and answer session. While those are being pulled up, we'll see. One of them is a test question, so maybe there's only 4. I do want to encourage everyone to stop in on the way out this afternoon. Spend a few minutes talking to each of the participants today, because you'll learn a lot. One thing I neglected to mention is that all of the work that we do is free. Free consulting. You can't beat the price. Let's see here. I am the representative, and can I just read these questions? Okay, thanks. Can you make the text bigger? I'm old, my eyes are bad. I'll try this. I'm a representative of an IT company dealing with cryptographics. I have no idea what that is. As far as financial aid goes on all levels, as you mentioned, are those available if we are establishing only a sales operation in the US and leaving manufacturing in Budapest and exporting our products to the US? Okay, so this is actually, this is a great question. Sergio kind of talked about this topic a little bit, as well as Josh. Incentives for companies going to the US are based on the number of employees that you're going to hire, the footprint that you're creating. If you bring in a sales office to the US, likely you're not going to get incentives. I'm just going to be honest with you, because there's not a lot of a reason for incentives. Now, if you're looking at opening a factory, and I'm just going to use that as an example because it's an easy one. If you're looking at opening a car factory, like the big car factories up in Győr, they'll give you, the states will give you incentives to do that, because you're not only impacting the employment, but you're also impacting really the tax base of that, because there's a lot of ancillary companies that will be formed outside of just your factory. A sales office, your financial input into the United States is going to be, maybe a few $1,000s a month or so just to start, and that's not enough to really incentivize. I'm just here to be honest with you, because I think honesty is a great policy. There is a question for Citibank. For Citibank, can a U.S.-based company open a bank account with Citibank in Hungary? I have a U.S. bank account with Citibank, but we are not officially a subsidiary of our Hungarian operations.
This would be a non-resident for us, but we need to take it separately just to understand if this will follow the target market. And so please contact, they can contact us. And
okay, so you hear that, Oliver? Contact Citibank directly, and Alina, they can contact. Okay, so you have Alina's information. Since unfortunately you're not here today. Contact her directly to open up a bank account here in Hungary. If for some reason you can't get a hold of Alina, then you can contact me and we'll put you in touch. Let's see here. Are there other grant opportunities in the U.S. besides SBIR and STTR? Anyone? I'm going to say we don't know, but we can find out for you. So if you send us an email, we'll check that out. Let's see, what is this? Correction. Are there any other grant opportunities in the U.S.? Okay, for European-owned SMEs. Same question, just phrased differently. Please reach out and we'll find out for you. We don't have every answer here on the top of our head, but we will find out. And the last question is, sorry, we cannot see the picture, so please switch the share screen. That's actually not a question, which is good. I don't have to answer it. But I do invite everyone here to please go out, enjoy some snacks, enjoy some conversations with the presenters. Be sure if you haven't signed the form, signed in when you came in this afternoon, be sure to sign in. That helps Bekhaika identify who was here and make sure that we have all of our programs ready. And once again, thank you so much for coming today. Have a great afternoon. We'll look forward to talking to you outside.
Közel fél évnyi előkészítés után nagy örömünkre szolgál, hogy a mai napon Nagy Elek elnök úrral, a Budapesti Kereskedelmi és Iparkamara elnökével együttműködési megállapodást kötött az Amerikai Magyar Kereskedelmi Kamara. A megállapodás keretében a vállalkozás fejlesztési túl több olyan stratégiai megállapodás is készült, illetőleg tervezési folyamatban van, amelyben a budapesti, illetőleg az amerikai vállalkozásoknak rengeteg előnyös lehetőség nyílik. Ezeknek az együttműködési keretében különböző események, konferenciák, delegációk, látogatások, programok fognak a következő években megvalósulni, és reméljük, hogy mind a budapesti, illetve mind a New York-i vállalkozások kölcsönösen fognak belőle profitálni.
Nagy öröm számunkra, hogy a Budapesti Kereskedelmi és Iparkamara együttműködési megállapodást írt alá a New Yorkban székelő Amerikai Magyar Kereskedelmi Kamarával. Ennek azért van különösen nagy jelentősége, mert mi itt a Budapesti Kamarában arra jöttünk rá, és ez a válság ébresztett rá arra, hogy mennyire fontos, hogy a kis és középvállalkozásaink hatékonyak legyenek. Persze ezt eddig is tudtuk, de ez most húsba vágóan fontos, és pont most csinálunk egy olyan felmérést, melyek azok a vállalatok, kis-középvállalatok, amelyek potenciálisan európai szintű hatékonyságot tudnak elérni. És ebben az együttműködésben a New York-i kamarával egy olyan lehetőségünk van, hogy ezek a vállalkozások kint Amerikában megvethetik a lábukat, tehát egy nagyon-nagyon jó export lehetőség. Én köszönöm ezt a lehetőséget, és nagyon-nagyon szurkolok, hogy minél több magyar vállalkozó jusson ki egy ilyen lehetőséggel.